Welcome back to my channel, and today we will be discussing on febrile convulsion. This is not only an important topic for exams, this is something that we see on a day-to-day office practice. If you like the content of my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it so that you get notifications whenever I post a video. So we should know a few basic terms before we jump into the topic. Those are convulsion, seizures and epilepsy. They cannot be used interchangeably because those are different. Convulsion is the physical manifestation where you describe the tonic-clonic movements, myoclonic movements, jerky movements, etc. So those are physical manifestations. So physical manifestations of what? That is a seizure. This abnormal synchronous electrical discharge in your cortex causes the physical manifestation of convulsion. So this electrical discharge is called as a seizure. And whenever a child or an adult has the increased risk of having multiple seizures, then it is called as an epilepsy. Febrile convulsions. So febrile convulsions, there are 4 to 5 points to actually call it a febrile convulsion. The typical age group is 6 to 60 months. Few papers describe as young as 1 month also. It peaks at around 12 to 18 months with a temperature of 100.4 degree Fahrenheit or above, and this convulsion is not secondary to a CNS infection or a metabolic disturbance, and this has happened without any previous history of unprovoked seizures or unprovoked convulsions. So these 4 points together are mandatory for us to define as a febrile convulsion. This is a benign condition which does not have long-term bad prognosis, especially in simple febrile seizures. It is up to 3 to 5% in our general population. It is classified as simple and complex. On what basis are they defining it? In a simple febrile seizures, there is only one episode of convulsion per febrile episode. It has a very brief duration, usually less than 5 minutes. It can be up to 15 minutes. It is usually of generalized tonic-clonic semiology, and it is not recurrent in a 24-hour period. It has got a very short postictal phase. The children usually bump back to their normal activities or normal behaviors within 5 to 10 minutes after a convulsion period is over. Whereas in contrast, a complex febrile seizure, more than one episode of convulsion can happen per febrile phase. It can last more than 15 minutes. The semiology can be focal or a generalized and prolonged variety. Prolonged is, according to textbook definition, a prolonged complex febrile seizure lasting more than 30 minutes is called as a febrile status epilepticus. It can also be multiple small seizures but without regain of consciousness in between the seizure episodes. Then it is called as febrile status. Complex febrile seizure can recur within a 24-hour period, and the postictal period can be long and it can be associated with postictal deficits like a Todd's palsy. Now the important point that I would like you to note is, for you to define it as a simple seizure, you want all of this criteria to be fulfilled. Whereas for you to define it as a complex febrile seizure, just one of them is enough for you to define. Meaning, if the child has a convulsion of more than 15 minutes alone, but rest is similar to simple, you still call it as a complex febrile seizure. Correct? So for a complex febrile seizure, if there is more than one seizure per febrile episode, or the duration is more than 15 minutes, or the semiology is different, or the seizure is recurrent in a 24-hour period, or the child has a postictal deficit, then it can be called as a complex seizure. Whereas for simple, all of these criteria has to be satisfied. Why this classification is important? This classification is important for us to know and for us to let the parents know what is the risk of the child having a recurrent febrile seizure, what is the risk of this child having a future epilepsy, and is there any difference in mortality, and will the child require any investigations for this current episode of seizures. For all of these answers to be given, you need to know what sort of seizure the child is having. Hence the classification. For a risk of recurrence of febrile seizure, it can be anywhere from 30 to 50% depending upon what age the child is having and what type of seizure the child is having. And risk of recurrence for a simple febrile seizure, it is 1%, very similar to the general population. Whereas for a complex febrile seizure, depending upon if it is going to be a focal seizure, then the percentage risk can be more. If just the duration is prolonged, then the percentage can be less of the child having increased risk of epilepsy in future. Whereas mortality rate, the general mortality rate is not different from general population in a simple febrile seizure. Whereas for a complex febrile seizure, it is 2 times higher for the next 2 years after the seizure, probably due to the underlying etiology. So coming to the risk of febrile convulsion, the child having another febrile convulsion in the future. After the first episode, you can advise the parents there is a risk of 30% of the child having a recurrent febrile convulsion till the risk period, meaning till 5 years to 5.5 years of age. If the child has second episode of febrile convulsion, then the risk increases to 50%. Suppose the child has the first febrile convulsion within 1 year of age, then the child has a 50% risk. These are some of the risk factors given in our Nelson. Major risk factors are younger age at onset, duration of fever is less than 24 hours and lesser degree of fever, meaning that fever is not very high, just between 100.4 to 102. And minor risk factors, there is a family history of febrile seizures or epilepsy, a complex febrile seizure, male gender, daycare and low serum sodium. So if just one risk factor is present, the risk is 30 to 50%. If 2 are present, 50 to 60, and if 3 they are at high risk, then it is 73 to 100%. Risk of future epilepsy. Note that this is epilepsy. So for epilepsy, you know, simple febrile convulsion is 1%, very similar to your general population. If the child is having recurrent febrile seizures, the chance is slightly higher, which is 4%. Note that in complex febrile seizures, 6% risk of epilepsy if just the duration or recurrence is different. But if the child is having a focal complex febrile seizure, then it is nearly 30% risk of the child going on to have an epilepsy. If the child has neurodevelopmental abnormalities, that has the highest risk of child having future epilepsy. Remember that if the child is already having a neurodevelopmental abnormality, you are not going to call them as a complex febrile seizure or a febrile seizure for that matter. You will be calling them or relabeling them as fever provoked convulsions. So what is the cause? Why does a child with fever have a convulsion? We don't know. There are different theories. Infection theory stated HHV 6B and 7, especially 6B, increased risk of having febrile status. Immunization, DPT and MMR, they can have fever and convulsions. A simple point that I would like to note is, after MMRV, I am talking about the combination vaccine which has everything together in a single vial. Okay, so there is an increased risk of fever and 2 times increased risk of febrile convulsions in 12 to 23 months age group. Compared to what? Compared to separate injections of MMR and varicella. So a child receiving MMR vaccine and varicella vaccine separately on the same sitting has lesser risk compared to a combination vaccine where there is 2 times increased risk in the next 5 to 12 days after receiving the vaccination. So what is advised is, at 15 months when the first dose of MMR or MMRV is given, ideally give separate doses of MMR vaccine plus varicella. Give it in the same sitting. The subsequent dose at 5 years you can give with parental consent. Tell them that there are 2 types of vaccines available. With MMRV there is a slightly increased risk of febrile convulsion, but the child is almost at the end of risk period, 5 years. So you can go ahead and give. Once the parent gives consent, then decide whether you are going to give MMRV as a combi vaccine or a separate vaccine. Next, iron insufficiency. There are controversial studies which state there are in support of febrile convulsions and few are like on the fence. But few studies have noted that ferritin less than 30 microgram per liter gives an increased risk of febrile convulsions. As far as genetics are concerned, there are few genes which have been associated with febrile convulsions. Feb1 to 4 and R43Q mutations in CARBG2 gene. The next is sodium channel SCN1A and SCN1B. Note that these genes are also associated with few epilepsy syndrome like GEFS plus, generalized epilepsy febrile seizures plus, and Dravet syndrome. Dravet syndrome is one of the most severe form of epilepsy syndrome where there is complete loss of function mutation of this SCN1A. So these children, what happens is they generally, they start out as febrile convulsions. Usually they will be focal and they will be clonic and they occur in clusters. Then slowly it becomes afebrile, then slowly it becomes multiple semiologies, and the child will start having regression, and it's a very difficult epilepsy syndrome to control. There is also another theory which is proposed where there is a imbalance between the pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokine dysregulation, and they are trying to use this marker, which is interleukin R1A, which is a pro-inflammatory marker, and interleukin 8, which is an anti-inflammatory marker. This ratio has been tried to see if there is an increased risk of febrile convulsions, and they have noted that increase in this ratio confers a future risk of hippocampal sclerosis, which is mesial temporal sclerosis and mesial temporal lobe epilepsy. Evaluation. What are you going to do for this child? A child has come to you with convulsions. You ask them if there is a history associated with convulsions, or the parents say no, we don't know, but when you are checking, the child is having a fever. So the child is actively convulsing now, then you stabilize the child. How do you stabilize the child? You look at airway, breathing, circulation, disability. You control the convulsions with medications and all that. And if the child is going to continue to convulse, then you can consider febrile status. Remember, for a child to continue to convulse from home to wherever your hospital is, it is definitely going to be more than 5 to 10 minutes. And if the child is continuing to convulse, you should definitely keep it in the back of your mind that this could be a febrile status epilepticus, and you should work up the child accordingly. Suppose this child has had a history, meaning the child had a convulsion at home. Now there is no active convulsion and child is coming to you. You can also ask them when was a fever associated with convulsion, just before, just after, all of them are febrile convulsion. But suppose the child has had a afebrile convulsion, then you work them up according to unprovoked convulsions. If it is a febrile convulsion, you ask for history and you examine the child. What are you looking for? You are looking for the focus of fever in this child. It can be an upper respiratory infection, it can be an otitis media, it can be a urinary tract infection. These are the common sites. These are where you should look for, apart from the obvious history that the parents are going to give. You manage the underlying illness. Then you assess whether this child has a risk of epilepsy in the future and whether this child needs few investigations. And you need to think at the back of your mind, is this child going to have a recurrent febrile convulsion, and what should I be advising the parent? Do you need to do blood tests? If a child is going to come convulsing to you, you will definitely do a blood gas in your emergency room. After that, rest of the investigation depends on what the child is going to present with. You can do a serum sodium because if there is a hyponatremia, you know that there is an increased risk of recurrence. And in a hyponatremic child, you will try to avoid hypotonic solution of fluids and you will try to give isotonic fluids. And if there is a doubt of underlying causes, you can work up the child for that particular cause. Role of lumbar puncture. You do lumbar puncture only if the infant is less than 6 months or if the signs or symptoms are suggestive of a intracranial infection. Consider lumbar puncture if the child is 6 to 12 months without taking immunization for your Haemophilus influenza and Streptococcus pneumonia, or you don't know the immunization status. If the child has been previously treated with antibiotics, it can be a partially treated meningitis and where the clinical signs and symptoms might be obscured. If it is a febrile status epilepticus, clinical judgment is required for us to decide upon where lumbar puncture is required. See, these investigations like lumbar puncture, EEG, neuroimaging, what I am going to tell you is few outlines. It has to be individualized on a case-to-case basis. Remember that. Role of EEG. See, EEG, even if it is going to turn out to be abnormal, It is not going to predict risk of recurrence or epilepsy in a child with simple febrile convulsions. So when do you do an EEG? Suppose this child has had a convulsion and the child is continuing to be in a postictal state. You don't know if it is just postictal state or the child is in a non-convulsive status. Then you do a EEG. If there are epileptiform discharges, you know this child is having a non-convulsive status epilepticus and you will treat the child as a febrile status. Next, only in high risk cases who can go on to develop epilepsy. When do you do a EEG? You do it after 2 weeks. Why not immediately? Why not within 2 weeks period? Because an EEG performed too soon can have non-specific slowing, especially in the posterior leads. And this will lead to confusion and you don't want that. So do it after 2 weeks. What do you need to know? Again, you are not going to say if the child is going to have risk of recurrence and all. You are going to try to delineate what type of epilepsy this child is having. Next, febrile status. Febrile status, again you need to use your clinical judgment. If you do an EEG in this hyperacute period, this is an exception. Okay, note, I am talking about hyperacute period, meaning within 48 to 72 hours. You are doing a EEG and this EEG is showing focal slowing over temporal area, then this child has increased risk of going on to have a hippocampal or a medial temporal sclerosis and a mesial temporal lobe epilepsy on follow-up. Neuroimaging, again if it is in a neurologically impaired child, you are going to call them as fever provoked convulsions. In a febrile status, acute unilateral hippocampal edema, if this finding is present in this acute period, then you call it as increased risk of this child going on to have hippocampal atrophy, because that is noted in 70%. But how much percentage of them is going to have temporal lobe epilepsy is yet to be known. So I am talking about this continuously, temporal lobe epilepsy. We will see what is in the next few moments. Genetic testing, as of now, there is no specific role if it is a straight cut case of febrile seizures. But if this child is having multiple prolonged focal febrile seizures, which is suggestive of Dravet syndrome, or there are multiple various seizure semiologies where you are suspecting it is some sort of epilepsy which has started out as a febrile convulsion in a young child less than 12 to 18 months, then you go on to do genetic testing. So this hippocampal sclerosis, mesial temporal lobe epilepsy and all of them. Dr. Mayer suggested that if the child is having a prolonged febrile seizure or a febrile status, there can be ischemia in the hippocampal region which will lead to sclerosis and hence confer increased risk for epilepsy, temporal lobe epilepsy. Intractable seizures in adults, when they were imaged, they were found to have hippocampal sclerosis. Now the conundrum is this: when they were doing controls and cases for febrile convulsions, they found that there were already lesions in hippocampus in controls. Note, it is not in cases of febrile convulsions. In controls, lesions in hippocampus was more. So there is another theory that runs around, states that this pre-existing lesion in hippocampus can contribute to febrile convulsion and subsequent development of epilepsy. Or it's how do you tell? The other side of it, other side of this coin is prolonged seizure can cause hippocampal lesion. So you don't know which came first, hen came first or egg came first, whether it is the cause or the effect. You don't know if this pre-existing lesion has caused this febrile convulsion or has caused this febrile convulsion, increased risk of epilepsy, or this lesion is increasing the brain's vulnerability to be damaged by a fever. We don't know. So management. Acute care in hospital, all of us know. A child is coming with convulsion, the management is going to remain same in acute care. Antipyretics, you will definitely give antipyretics, but antipyretics is not for reducing risk in the future. It is going to reduce risk in the current episode of fever. It will not reduce risk of recurrence if there is going to be a future fever or next episode of fever. Remember that. It will increase the comfort of the child, obviously. As far as prophylaxis is concerned, there are two types, intermittent and continuous prophylaxis. Note, see, neither continuous nor intermittent anticonvulsive therapy is recommended for children with simple febrile convulsion, even if it is a single or a multiple episodes. because the risks outweigh that of the benefits. Okay. Intermittent prophylaxis, clobazam can be given 0.7 to 1 mg per kg per day in 2 to 3 divided doses for first 3 days of fever. Even if the fever is for 10 days, you ask them to take for only first 3 to 4 days. Continuous prophylaxis, you use valproate or phenobarbital. You use only in cases with high risk of epilepsy, if there is a recurrence despite intermittent prophylaxis, or if the child has had a febrile status, until you know what needs to be done. Next, management at home. You advise the parents to give antipyretics, and if there is a convulsion lasting more than 15 minutes, you ask them to advise them intranasal midazolam, which comes in 0.5 mg per spray. You give at 0.2 mg per kg per dose, divided between 2 nostrils. You can also give rectal diazepam, but intranasal midazolam is preferred to a rectal dose of diazepam, because obviously it is easier to administer and the effect is almost the same. You need to decide on what you are going to counsel the parents. You need to reassure them that it is a benign condition. You need to tell them febrile convulsion can still recur till the risk period is over. You need to advise them what chance this child has of having a future epilepsy, and you need to observe this child if this child is going to have recurrent convulsions or any risk factors. And you need to teach them how to manage this child at home. Less than 5 minutes, no need to worry. More than 5 minutes, you are going to give them intranasal midazolam and make ready to shift the child to hospital, because we don't know if the child is going to stop convulsing or continue to convulse or going to have another convulsion. Thank you all for your patient listening. Hope I made this topic simpler for you guys. I know most of you will be knowing it, but still. Thank you all.